In the journey of life, one of the most delicate and often misunderstood experiences is the relationships we build with others, especially friendships and close connections, where trust and sincerity are meant to grow. Yet sometimes hidden feelings begin to take root beneath the surface. Jealousy is not always loud or obvious. It often appears quietly, disguised in words that seem harmless and actions that seem supportive, yet carry a different intention within the heart. And if we are not attentive, we may overlook the subtle signs that reveal what is truly being felt. It is important to understand that not every smile carries genuine joy for your success, and not every word of encouragement comes from a place of pure support, because the human heart is complex. And when insecurity or comparison takes hold, it can influence how people respond to your growth and progress. There is a need for wisdom, a need for discernment, and a need for clarity as you walk through relationships, because not everyone who stands beside you is walking with the same purpose, and not every connection is meant to last if it is built on comparison instead of genuine care. Hidden jealousy can quietly affect the way people treat you, the way they speak to you, and the way they respond to your achievements, and without awareness, it can create distance, misunderstanding, and even harm to relationships that once felt strong. But in recognizing these patterns, there is also an opportunity to respond with grace, to remain grounded in truth, and to choose relationships that are built on honesty, trust, and mutual respect, for those are the connections that strengthen the heart and bring lasting peace. As you reflect on this truth, you begin to see the importance of surrounding yourself with people who celebrate your growth, who encourage your journey, and who stand with you not out of comparison, but out of genuine support. And in that understanding, your path becomes clearer and your relationships become more meaningful. You learn a lot about people when you stop focusing on what they say and start paying attention to how they move, how they react, how they respond when your life starts to grow, when your confidence begins to rise, and when your success begins to speak louder than your doubts. Because the truth is, when others feel threatened, when they see something in you that challenges their own comfort, their own confidence, or their own position, they begin to reveal parts of themselves they never intended to show. And if you are paying attention, you will see more than words could ever tell. Some people will celebrate you when you are down, when you are quiet, when you are not moving forward. But the moment you start to rise, the moment you start to grow, something shifts. And suddenly, the same people who once seemed supportive begin to act differently, not because you changed in a negative way, not because you changed in a negative way, but because your growth made them confront something within themselves. That is the moment where truth begins to surface, because pressure reveals character, and comparison reveals insecurity, and when someone feels threatened by your progress, their reactions often expose more about their own inner struggles than anything about you. You have to understand that not everyone has the same level of confidence, not everyone has the same sense of direction, and not everyone is comfortable seeing someone else step into their purpose, because your growth can remind others of the areas where they have not yet grown, and that can create discomfort. But you cannot shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You cannot dim your light to protect someone else's insecurity, because your life is not meant to be lived in limitation just so others can feel at ease. Your life is meant to grow, to expand, to grow, to expand, and to move forward with purpose. When others feel threatened, their true nature often begins to surface, whether it is subtle criticism, silent resistance, or even distance. These reactions are not random. They are responses to how your presence makes them feel. And if you are wise, you will observe without reacting immediately. Not everything deserves a response. Not every opinion deserves your energy, and not every reaction deserves your attention, because when people reveal themselves, they are giving you information, and that information is powerful if you choose to see it clearly. There is strength in observation, in stepping back and allowing people to show you who they really are without interference. Because when you try to force clarity, you miss the truth that unfolds naturally over time, and that truth can guide your decisions in ways that protect your peace. You begin to realize that some people are only comfortable when they feel they are ahead, and the moment you begin to rise, their attitude changes, not because of anything you did, but because your growth disrupted their sense of control or comparison, and that is when you have to stay grounded. Because if you allow the reactions of others to dictate your confidence, you will begin to second guess yourself. You will begin to question your progress, and you will begin to slow down your own growth just to keep others comfortable. But you were never meant to live like that. You were never meant to adjust your life to fit into someone else's limitations. You were meant to rise, to grow, to evolve, and to keep moving forward, regardless of how others respond. When people feel threa, tended, they often reveal their fears, their insecurities, their unresolved struggles, and sometimes even their hidden intentions. And if you are not careful, you might take those reactions personally, when in reality, they have very little to do with you. You have to develop the strength to separate yourself from other people's emotions, to understand that their discomfort is not your responsibility, and that their reaction is not your burden to carry. Because your focus should remain on your own path, your own growth, and your own direction. There is a quiet confidence that comes from understanding this truth. A confidence that allows you to move freely, to grow without hesitation, and to trust that everything you are becoming is aligned with your purpose. Even if others cannot understand it, you begin to value authenticity over approval, truth over comfort, and growth over acceptance, because you realize that not everyone is meant to walk with you, and not everyone will understand the journey you are on. And that is okay, because your life is not defined by how others respond to your success. Your life is defined by how you stay true to yourself. Your life is defined by how you stay true to yourself, how you continue to move forward, and how you remain grounded even when others reveal more than they intended. So you keep moving, you keep growing, and you keep observing, because when others feel threatened, they reveal more than you realize. And the wise person is the one who sees it clearly and continues to walk in purpose without losing themselves in the process. You have to understand something early in life, something most people don't learn until they've been tested a few times, and that is this. Not everyone who looks at you sees your worth the same way you do, and when jealousy shows up, it is rarely about your value. It is almost always about someone else's struggle with their own jealousy. Is a mirror? And what T reflects is not your strength, not your success, and not your success, and not your character, but the insecurities that someone carries within themselves, the doubts they haven't dealt with, the gaps they haven't filled, and the questions they haven't answered about their own life. You can be doing everything right. You can be working hard, staying focused, building something meaningful, and still, there will be people who feel uncomfortable just watching you grow. Not because you are doing anything wrong, but because your growth forces them to look at their own lack of progress. That is not your burden to carry. That is not your weight to hold, because your journey is your responsibility. Your growth is your responsibility. Your growth is your responsibility, and your worth is something that does not rise or fall based on how someone else feels about you. You have to learn how to separate perception from truth, because jealousy often distorts perception. It creates tension, it creates judgment, and it creates reactions that have nothing to do with your reality, and everything to do with someone else's internal struggle. When people are secure in themselves, they celebrate others, they support others. They don't feel threatened by someone else's success, because they understand that your progress does not take anything away from them. But when insecurity is present, comparison begins, and comparison often leads to jealousy, and jealousy does not always show up loudly. Sometimes it is quiet. Loudly. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it hides behind subtle comments. Sometimes it hides behind distance. Sometimes it hides behind behavior that seems normal on the surface, but carries a different intention beneath it. You have to train yourself to recognize it without letting it define you. Because if you start measuring your worth by how others respond to you, you will always be on unstable ground. Always adjusting, always questioning, always trying to please people who are not even at peace with themselves. Your worth is not determined by someone else's opinion. Your worth is rooted in who you are, in what you stand for, in the effort you put into your life, and in the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. Jealousy can make people act in ways that are not always kind, not always supportive, and not always fair. But that is when you have to stand firm. When you have to remind yourself that their reaction is not your identity and their insecurity is not your responsibility. You don't shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You don't hold back your growth to ease someone else's discomfort. And you don't lower your standards just because someone else is struggling to meet theirs. You keep moving, you keep building, you keep building because that is your path. And the more you understand that jealousy says more about the person who carries it than it ever will about you, the more freedom you gain. There is power in not reacting to everything. There is strength in staying focused when others are distracted by comparison, and there is wisdom in continuing your journey without getting caught up in the opinions of those who cannot see clearly. You have to protect your mindset because jealousy can be loud, it can be subtle. And if you allow it to enter your thoughts, it can begin to shape how you see yourself, and that is where the real danger lies. But when you understand your worth, when you know who you are, when you are grounded in your purpose, jealousy loses its power over you because it no longer defines how you move, how you think, or how you live. You begin to see it for what it truly is, a reflection, not of your value, but of someone else's struggle. And once you see it clearly, you can move forward without carrying it with you. That is the kind of strength that allows you to stay focused, to stay grow. And to continue building the life you are meant to build, without being distracted by what others cannot resolve within themselves. Because at the end of the day, your worth is not in question. Your worth is already established. And jealousy will never change that, no matter how loud it becomes, or how often it appears. You learn over time that not all harm comes loud and obvious. Not all danger announces itself with noise. Sometimes the most dangerous things in life come quiet, subtle, and disguised as normal, and that is where quiet envy lives, in the spaces where you least expect it, in the smiles that don't match the eyes, in the words that sound supportive but carry a different tone underneath. Quiet envy is dangerous because it grows slowly, it builds in silence, and if you are not paying attention, it can turn into something that begins to affect your peace, your confidence, and your direction before you even realize what is happening. You have to train yourself to notice the small signs, the subtle shifts in behavior, the moments where someone's energy changes when you succeed, when you share good news, when you take a step forward, because people don't always express envy directly, but their actions often reveal what their words try to hide. There is a difference between genuine support and hidden envy. And the difference is consistency, because someone who truly supports you will celebrate your wins without hesitation, will stand by you through your progress, and will encourage your growth without feeling threatened by it. But quiet envy shows itself in different ways, sometimes in delayed responses, sometimes in lack of enthusiasm, sometimes in unnecessary criticism, and sometimes in distance that appears without reason, and if you ignore those signs, you give quiet envy the opportunity to grow. You cannot afford to overlook what your instincts are prior. NG to tell you, because your intuition is often the first to recognize when something is off, when something does not align, when something does not feel genuine. And that inner awareness is a form of protection. When you start to recognize quiet envy early, you gain control over how much influence it has in your life, because you can create distance, you can adjust your expectations, and you can protect your peace before it turns into something that causes harm. But if you ignore it, if you dismiss it, if you tell yourself that everything is fine when it is not, quiet envy can grow, and over time it can turn into open negativity, into tension, into actions that can damage relationships and affect your emotional well-being. That is why awareness is power, because the more you see, the more you understand. And the more you understand, the better you can protect yourself from unnecessary harm. You must also understand that not everyone has the same level of confidence. Not everyone is comfortable with growth, and not everyone can celebrate others without feeling a sense of comparison. And when you understand that, you stop taking things personally and start observing more carefully. Quiet envy is not always about you. It is often about what someone else is struggling with internally. But that does not mean you ignore it. It means you recognize it for what it is and respond in a way that protects your peace. You have to learn the difference between giving people the benefit of the doubt and ignoring repeated patterns because one allows you to remain open and understanding, while the other leaves you exposed to harm when someone consistently shows signs of envy, when their behavior toward you changes in noticeable ways. That is not something to overlook. That is something to acknowledge because patterns do not lie. Because patterns do not lie, and behavior reveals truth. And once you recognize it, you have a choice. You can address it with clarity, you can adjust your distance, or you can set boundaries that protect your energy. But what you cannot do is ignore it and expect it to disappear. There is strength in awareness, there is power in observation, and there is wisdom in acting on what you see before it becomes something bigger than it needs to be. Because quiet envy, if left unchecked, can turn into loud damage. Damage that affects trust, damage that affects communication, and damage that affects your peace. And by the time it becomes loud, the impact is already greater than it should have been. So you stay alert, you stay grounded, and you stay aware of the people around you. Not with fear, but with wisdom. Because wisdom allows you to move with confidence while still protecting yourself from harm. And when you learn to recognize quiet envy early, you don't just protect your relationships, you protect your mind, your energy, and your future. And that kind of awareness keeps you strong, focused, and in control of the life you are building. Without being shaken by what others cannot handle, you come to a point in life where you realize that your energy is one of your most valuable assets, more valuable than time in many ways, because your energy determines how you think, how you move, how you grow, and how you show up every single day. And once it's gone, you cannot easily replace it. Not everyone deserves access to that energy. Not everyone deserves to be close to your growth. And not everyone is capable of celebrating the progress you make. And that is a truth you have to accept if you want to protect your peace and continue moving forward with strength. There are people who will stand beside you when you are stagnant, when you are uncertain, when you are not making visible progress. But the moment you start to rise, the moment you begin to grow, something, energy shifts, and their energy toward you changes. Not always openly, but subtly. In ways that reveal more than words ever could. You have to pay attention to that shift. Because not everyone can celebrate your growth, and some people will quietly resist it. Not because of anything you did wrong, but because your progress forces them to confront their own lack of movement. And that is where the danger lies. Because when you allow people like that to stay too close, when you give them access to your energy, they can slowly drain it. They can create doubt, they can create tension, and they can affect how you see your own progress if you are not careful. Protecting your energy means being selective, being aware, and being intentional about who you allow into your space, because your environment has a direct impact on your mindset, and your mindset determines how far you can go. You cannot grow in an environment that constantly questions your progress. You cannot thrive around people who feel uncomfortable with your success. And you cannot stay focused if you are surrounded by energy that pulls you in the opposite direction. There is strength in distance, in choosing to step back from people who cannot support your growth. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Because sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to protect what you have built by limiting who has access to it. You have to ask yourself, who celebrates you without hesitation? Who encourages you without comparison? Who stands with you without competition? Because those are the people who deserve your energy. Those are the people who help you grow, and those are the people who strengthen your journey. And for those who cannot celebrate your growth, you do not need to fight them. You do not need to prove anything to them, and you do not need to shrink yourself to make them comfortable, because your life is not meant to be adjusted to fit into someone else's limitations. Your growth is not an invitation for judgment. It is a reflection of your effort, your discipline, and your commitment to becoming better. Your discipline and your commitment to becoming better. And anyone who cannot see that is not meant to guide your path. You must also understand that protecting your energy is not about shutting people out. It is about creating balance. It is about knowing when to engage and when to step back, when to share and when to protect, and when to give and when to hold. Because if you give your energy to the wrong people, If you constantly try to earn approval from those who cannot support you, you will find yourself drained, distracted, and disconnected from your own purpose. But when you protect your energy, when you surround yourself with people who uplift you, who support your growth, who celebrate your progress, you begin to thrive because energy is contagious. And the right energy will elevate you while the wrong energy will hold you back. You have to be intentional about your circle, intentional about your conversations, intentional about your environment, because everything around you either contributes to your growth or takes away from it. There is no neutral ground when it comes to your energy. And once you fully understand that, once you begin to act on that understanding, your life begins to shift. Your focus becomes sharper, your mind becomes clearer, and your direction becomes stronger. You stop seeking validation from those who cannot see your worth, and you start investing your energy into people and situations that align with your purpose. And that is where real growth begins. Because protecting your energy is not just about avoiding negativity, it is about choosing positivity, choosing support, choosing alignment, and choosing to move forward with people who understand your journey and respect your growth. And when you live like that, when you move like that, you begin to build a life that is not only successful, but also peaceful, focused, and deeply aligned with who you are meant to become within themselves. You grow in life and start to understand a hard truth, one that does not always come easy. Not everyone who smiles with you is truly for you. Not everyone who stands beside you is standing with you in spirit. And not everyone who appears close has pure intentions in their heart. There are people who can laugh with you, talk with you, share moments with you, and still carry thoughts that do not align with your best interest. And if you are not paying attention, you can mistake their presence for loyalty, when in reality, it is just proximity without genuine support. You have to learn to read beyond the surface, because a smile can hide many things. It can hide envy, it can hide competition, it can hide discomfort with your progress, and it can hide intentions that are not always visible at first glance. That is why you cannot rely solely on appearances. You have to observe patterns, you have to look at consistency, and you have to pay attention to how people act when you succeed, when you speak, when you grow, because those moments reveal more truth than any smile ever could. When someone truly wishes you well, their actions will reflect it, their words will align with it, and their energy will support your growth without hesitation. But when someone does not, there will be subtle signs, small inconsistencies, and quiet resistance that, if ignored, can grow into something more. You cannot afford to let your guard down just because someone presents themselves in a friendly way. Because not every friendly face carries good intentions, and not every kind gesture comes from a pure place. This is not about living in fear, it is about living in awareness, about being conscious of the people you allow into your space, about protecting your peace, your energy, and your direction from influences that do not support you. There is a difference between being open and being unaware, between trusting wisely and trusting blindly. And wisdom teaches you to move with discernment, to observe carefully, and to give people time to show who they really are. You will notice that some people are comfortable when you are not progressing, when you are not growing, when you are not moving forward. But the moment you begin to rise, something shifts, and their behavior begins to change. Not always openly, but enough to signal that something is not aligned. And when you notice that shift, you have a choice. You can ignore it and hope for the best, or you can acknowledge it and protect yourself accordingly. Because ignoring the signs does not make them disappear. It only delays the moment when the truth becomes unavoidable. You have to trust your instincts, because your instincts are often the first to recognize when something is not right, when someone's energy does not match their words, when a connection does not feel as genuine as it appears, and that inner awareness is a powerful tool. Not everyone who smiles with you will stand with you when it matters. Not everyone who celebrates with you will defend you when necessary. And not everyone who speaks well of you will protect your name when you are not present. That is why you must build your strength on something deeper than external validation. Because if your confidence depends on how others treat you, You will always be vulnerable to their inconsistency. Instead, build your life on truth, on awareness, on understanding who you are and what you stand for, so that even when people reveal their true nature, you remain steady, unshaken, and focused on your path. There is peace in knowing that you do not need everyone to be for you, that you do not need everyone to support you, and that you do not need every person who smiles with you to be part of your journey. What you need is clarity, what you need is awareness, and what you need is the strength to see people for who they truly are without allowing their actions to disrupt your peace. When you reach that level of understanding, you begin to move differently. You begin to choose your circle more carefully. You begin to value authenticity over appearance, and you begin to protect your energy with intention, because at the end of the day, your life is too valuable, your time is too important, and your peace is too precious to be surrounded by people who do not genuinely wish you well. So you move forward with wisdom, with awareness, and with a quiet strength, knowing that not everyone who smiles with you is for you, and that understanding alone will save you from more damage than you can see right now. In the end, wisdom teaches you to see beyond faces and hear beyond words, to understand that true intentions are revealed through time, through actions, and through consistency. Not every smile is sincere, and not every presence is meant to stay. But when you learn to recognize that truth, you begin to move with greater clarity and confidence. You stop chasing approval from those who do not truly value you, and you start investing your energy into those who genuinely support your growth. You become more selective, more aware, and more grounded in who you allow into your life. This does not make you cold. It makes you wise. It does not make you distant. It makes you protected, and it does not make you closed off. It makes you intentional. Because protecting your peace, your energy, and your direction is not about shutting people out. It is about making sure the right people have access to the life you are building. And when you live with that level of awareness, you walk with confidence, you move with purpose, and you stand strong knowing that you are no longer fooled by appearances, but guided by truth. And that truth keeps you safe, focused, and free to grow without unnecessary burden.